be scared. Your family. They're here with us. We are put back together. It's me. It's me. It's me.
Over the course of the 10 years FNaF phase has been around, many theories have come and gone, but many have left a great mark and impact on the theorizing community, whether it be debunked theories like Mic Trap, or vastly accepted ones like Molten MCI, or even divisive theories like Frights Games and Tails Game. By the way, I recently made a video about the canonicity of the books, please check it out down below in the description. What all these theories have in common though, is that they greatly impact the community in their own various ways, and ShatterVictim is one of those theories but in the modern day, having a great deal of evidence, but also some issues and counter evidence. And today, in this video, we are covering ShatterVictim, what it is, its evidence, and my main central problem with it. However though, I will also provide a potential solution to this main problem, while also taking the theory and expanding it in my own way, as I do believe it can be used as a springboard to solve long debated and unsolved mysteries of FNaF 4. So make sure to watch until the end for the full conclusion of this theory. But before we do, remember, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. It really helps me out and I really do appreciate it, but now let's get right into the theory. I think a good way to start would be first explaining what ShatterVictim even is. The theory of ShatterVictim was created by the theorist Cuban Fancy, who was himself inspired by the theory of Memory Victim. The theory basically goes as follows. When the crying child died, his soul was broken. And if you don't know what broken means, think of the MCI kids from the 4th closet, whose souls were broken apart via their memories. Michael Brooks even directly says that they are broken, very similarly to the crying child might I add. Another example of a shattered soul is Andrew in the Fight series, whose soul is shattered across dozens of separate items. It basically means their soul is broken and is in multiple places at once. So when the crying child died, his soul was broken and spread across the classic animatronics, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy. His soul became a part of the 5 animatronics he considered his friends before he died. This is meant to play into why the crying child's memories are such a huge part of Happiest Day, as each of the minigames corresponds to the memories of the crying child. Now, you could also take the theory even further and say that the memories actually infect the location itself, explaining the various hauntings like the posters, the signs, it's me, etc. But we'll get into that more later, but that is also part of the theory and is inspired by Memory Victim. However though, that is pretty much the most fundamental gist of the theory. The bite victim dies, his soul shatters, and it becomes attached to the classic characters. These memories then would later be used in some way during Happiest Day to free the other souls. Anything beyond that is pretty much just speculation and up to the individual theorists. Well, now you may be asking, if I'm covering ShatterVictim, what is the evidence for the theory? Well, that's a good question, but I'm not going to be doing that myself. Flipside's return to give a brief overview of the theory's evidence. Take it away.
ShatterVictim. Some of you have heard of it, some of you have not. Heavily inspired by the theory known as Memory Victim, ShatterVictim is the idea that after the big bite and the death of FNaF 4's crying child, he was broken, as the final line implies, with him being broken meaning that his soul, aka his memories, have been shattered, and thus, he needs to be put back together. The idea that someone being broken and needing to be put back together is by restoring their memories was first shown to us in the novel trilogy, specifically the 4th Closet, where the Golden Freddy spirit Michael Brooks explains to Carlton that his friends are broken, they are all in pieces, and they have to be put back together, just like what's described to be happening with the crying child in FNaF 4. And yet somehow when this book first came out, people completely ignored this line being used in this context and instead used it as MicBot evidence. Because, yeah. Anyways, this gave us better clarification on how this line was being used during FNaF 4. But we once again saw this type of event occur in another book series, one said by Scott that it would answer some of the biggest questions from the lore of the old games, that being the Fazbear Frights. In the Fazbear Frights, vengeful spirit Andrew experiences a situation where his agony, which he literally defines as parts of himself, are shattered and spread across various haunted objects in the Fazbear Frights series. As a result, Andrew struggles to remember everything when he awakens inside the Stitch Wraith with Jake. This is because he spread around his agony, which were parts of his soul, his memories, and effectively broke his spirit apart. Not his consciousness, but his memories, his identity. And so it becomes the mission of Andrew and Jake throughout the Stitch Wraith Stingers to collect all the haunted objects, Andrew infected with his agony, and bring them together in one place. This way, Andrew is finally able to remember his past and move on into the afterlife with Jake. Which doesn't fully go as intended. But either way, this situation is very important, because Andrew's situation, in a lot of ways, is reminiscent of the crying child's predicament we read about in the survival logbook. After Andrew is shattered, he has difficulty remembering anything, and cannot see properly, having to rely on Jake for help until he is put back together, after they collect all of his pieces. It seems like all the side effects that Andrew is experiencing after his soul is shattered are extremely similar to the symptoms the crying child is shown to experience in the logbook, such as not being able to see and having to rely on another spirit to try and help him, like how Jake helped Andrew. Now, I'm not saying that the crying child is Andrew himself, but the point is that this implies that Andrew and the crying child experienced very similar situations, that being that they were shattered and thus weakened during that time, because they lost their memories. But here's where it gets really interesting, as there is evidence of this type of scenario happening to the crying child in the games. I want to turn your attention to FNaF 3, where we are introduced to the Happiest Day minigames. We must play through multiple minigames themed around specific Freddy's characters and locations in order to reach the good ending to the game, that being Happiest Day, which frees the spirits of the missing children. The theory of ShatterVictim speculates that all these minigames are actually the Bite Victim's memories, with his memories being attached to the other spirits of the missing children, and thus all the other animatronics. The reasoning for this idea is actually due to the fact that every single one of the Happiest Day minigames connects back to something Bite Victim witnessed during the minigames in FNaF 4. BB's air adventure could link back to this child in FNaF 4, who suspiciously looks like Balloon Boy, Mangle's quest connecting to the broken Mangle toy in the girls' room, Chica's party world connecting to the tiny toy Chica that the little girl is using at the playground. Stage 01 is obviously connected to Fredbear's Family Diner, with Fredbear and Spring Bonnie being on stage, and the Shadow Bonnie minigame connecting to the shadows on the wall in FNaF 4, which the crying child is afraid of. In fact, the shadows in FNaF 4 are actually the same shade of purple as Shadow Bonnie in FNaF 3. And finally, the entire Happiest Day minigame being a flipped version of Fredbear's Family Diner from FNaF 4. This idea is also heavily supported by FNaF World's clock ending, where the player is tasked with putting pieces in place for someone referred to as him. That him implied to be the crying child, since the beginning of the game has a cutscene where a mysterious pair of yellow eyes repeats the words said to the crying child in his final moments, promising to put him back together. And the game ends with the yellow eyes telling him the pieces are in place for you. The pieces he's referring to being the FNaF 3 minigames, since during the clock route of the game, we are shown to actually be putting the pieces in place that will be used to create the Happiest Day minigames in FNaF 3. These pieces are his memories, and when put together, they give us Happiest Day. All of this stuff I've covered is probably the most basic version of this theory, as well as the most surface level evidence, as there are so many different variations of this theory that extend far beyond FNaF 4, with some believing that the Bite Victim's memories cause a chain reaction of events across the entire series. It's honestly super interesting, and I'd recommend checking it out. But anyways, that's all for me. I'm gonna hand it back to Draz. I'll see you guys on the flip side.
Once again, massive thanks to Flipside for coming on and explaining the evidence for ShatterVictim. Make sure to check out his channel down below in the description. However though, with the evidence out of the way, I want to move on to one large flaw I have with the theory and why I think it matters. What is this massive flaw, you may ask? Well, it's the question of, well, why? Why would the crying child's soul be attached to the classic animatronics and the MCI kids' souls? Most of the fandom currently believes that MCI took place in 1985, 2 whole years after the crying child's death. Okay, it seems my audio cut out as I was recording this, so, well, I gotta do it again. So, let's take it from the top. What I was going to say though is that why for no apparent reason would the bite victim's soul just attach itself to vessels and the souls that would later inhabit those vessels? Fredbear, for example, makes sense. His friend was Fredbear, his fear is Fredbear, and he was bit by Fredbear. The point being, the bite victim has a big emotional attachment to Fredbear, and while he does call the other plushies his friends, that by default wouldn't create a strong enough emotional connection to cause their soul to magically shatter itself and inhabit 5 whole things at once. It would also be weird if the MCI kids were bound and trapped in his memories as shown in FNaF 3 if they died long after he did 2 years later. Even caused this to happen, it just doesn't really make much sense to me personally. And that is the problem I will be addressing today in this video. So how do we fix that issue? Honestly, the simple fix is one I covered before, the MCI thing, as the core problem would be the question of why the crying child's soul is tied to the classic animatronics and the MCI kids' souls. And indeed, it is weird if they died 2 years later, but if instead, if it is as I believe and the MCI occurred in 1983, as supported by fnaflore, Syslocation, and Help 1 and 2, we actually do fix most of these issues. However though, I won't be covering why I believe the MCI takes place in 1983 in this video. If you want to find out why I believe that, check out this video here. But for now, for the sake of the theory, let's assume it is 1983. How does that fix ShatterVictim? To start off, I believe it gives the bite victim a strong enough emotional connection to the missing kids. He was literally friends with them, having known them before they died, and was still friends with them even after they died. In a way, it would be somewhat similar to how Abby treats the missing kids who chill in Mike's house as friends in the movie timeline. Even in the movie, Abby uses similar phrasing to the classic animatronics as the bite victim does to the plushies, where she calls them friends, even drawing drawings of them together, very similar to how bite victim refers to plushies in the minigames. Under this idea as well, the MCI kids would have also been there when the bite victim died, being represented by the plushies and directly called the crying child's friends in the final cutscene. The final speaker even uses the plural we before switching to the singular I, as if there's multiple spirits in the same scene. And if the crying child was their friend and is goldenfreddy, I believe it all continues to line up pretty well. For example, the bite victim is associated with core 5 animatronics in Happiest Day, represented as the goldenfreddy among the other children. And yes, I do still believe this child is pretty clearly the bite victim. Maybe I'll make a video on it sometime soon, but not for a while as I do have some other ideas in the works. But keep in mind for that, because it will probably happen someday. Moving on though, he's also represented as Fredbear in Fredbear and Friends, Fredbear and his friends. Fredbear and Friends also parallels to Vibe 83, which places the bite victim once again as Fredbear. Fredbear, aka the bite victim, is one among the 5. Even in the week before, the bite victim is the only goldenfreddy soul depicted, killing Ralph in the 1983 ending. Even the fellow theorist Exploit on Twitter points out how you can gain the goldenfreddy memory plush in Help 1 or 2 by mixing 4 ingredients and a new secret one together, and the week before, Fredbear sings the secret ingredient is you during the Vibe 83. I agree with Exploit here that this shows us that goldenfreddy is connected to 4 similar things alongside one secret thing becoming one whole. Basically, this is saying, at least in my opinion, that the bite victim is the secret ingredient of goldenfreddy. He is Fredbear, and the others are his friends. This gives him an emotional attachment to the animatronics and the souls, since he would have had a personal connection to them in life and death, and he remembered them too during his own death, represented by the plushies. It basically explains why the bite victim is connected to the others. He was friends with them on a personal level. He had a unique connection to them that he didn't have to anyone else. Point being, MCI 83 basically fixes ShatterVictim, and ShatterVictim explains Happiest Day and why goldenfreddy is so unique to the others. But is that really it? Should I end the video now? Should you click off the video? Well, not so fast, because I believe there is more to ShatterVictim than we think. That is, we can take ShatterVictim to the next level. Stick with me and let me ramble, and maybe I'll click a little bit, though I may lose you, who knows. Let's return to the Night 6 cutscene, where I believe Charlie promises to put the crying child back together. Remember how I pointed out before that it switches between the we and the I in the cutscene, indicating multiple spirits or people present. That means the puppet is playing the pronoun game. So what if instead, when she says you and I will put you back together, it is actually the plural you? Actually, game theorists covered this exact idea nearly 10 years ago in the 4 Games 1 Story theory, one of my favorite theories actually. So I'll let old MadPat explain so you get a better idea what I'm talking about.
It's the puppet, promising to right the wrongs of the pizzeria by bringing peace to the crying child's spirit. How does he plan to do this? Well, look at what he says. We are still your friends. It's not I am still your friend. The puppet using the plural here means that there would be multiple spirits present in this final scene that consider themselves friends to the crying child, but we also see this. I am still here. The others are gone now, stuffed, leaving only the one with the ability to transcend the animatronic suits, the puppet. And look at the last line the puppet says, I will put you back together. We've all been assuming his you is referring to the crying child, but consider for a minute that the puppet is instead playing the pronoun game, to steal a phrase from CinemaSins, and is instead referring to the plural you. You 5 are broken, and I will put you 5 back together. He's planning on reuniting the spirits of these 5 friends. What makes me so sure? Well, we see it happen. It's the conclusion to the whole story. In FNaF 3's The Happiest Day minigame, we see the crying child's birthday one more time. 5 kids in masks representing the same 5 animatronics, with the birthday boy representing Golden Fredbear. And who's the one we see in this minigame putting everyone back together again? The puppet. Just like he promised the boy he would do on his deathbed. And here's the best part.
Now, if this is true, it actually does make a whole lot of sense. She is promising to put them all back together. All 5 kids. Wait, stop. 5? Doesn't that sound a bit familiar? 5 things becoming one thing. 5 kids becoming one. Or 5 robots becoming one machine. Oh yeah, it's exactly that. Yup, in 2015, we might have had the first example of the idea of 5 becoming one right here in fnaflore. And it was right in front of us the whole time in Happiest Day and ShatterVictim. This means Charlie, when putting the bite victim back together, connected his soul to all the others, turning them all into one being. This could even explain what "it's me" is, as it's pretty much confirmed to be goldenfreddy's catchphrase. It's associated with him in the hallucinations, achievements, and loading screens, and even the merch. It's his term. But we do see other characters say the term. Even Ralph, Papalia, and Bronwyn say it when they die on stuck in suits in the week before. So how can it be Golden Freddy's term if the others say it as well? Well, it's because Golden Freddy is a part of literally everything. Golden Freddy, aka the Bite Victim, is a part of the classics and MCI kids. So when they repeat "it's me," it's because they're connected to him particularly. Likewise, when a person is stuck in the souls trapped in the pizzeria, they are added to the family of Fazbear. Their soul becomes connected to the location and thus the Bite Victim, so they start repeating the line. To more simplify what I'm talking about here, the idea is that not only is the Bite Victim connected to the animatronics, but overall connected to the location itself. And when you die in Fazbear's, and your soul joins the family, you are thus connected to the Bite Victim, who's connected to everything else. Hence why they say "it's me." The Bite Victim is a part of them. This honestly could be a theory video of its own, which I could do actually in the future if you wanted. However though, that isn't the end yet. I believe we can go even deeper and even solve one of fnaflore's biggest mysteries when it was released. A mystery that hasn't been answered till this day. The sister's room. Yes, I do believe ShatterVictim may also solve who the sister was meant to be when the game was released. But first, we have to ask the question, what was the original story of this game? Making sure to take into account everything we talked about before in this video and in past videos. Well, we do know the game was solvable when it was released. Scott said so himself. He also said the original story was complete, so we do know that the sister's room, at the very least, had an answer when it came out. Whether or not it somehow still applies today can be debated or just ignored, but it would count Elizabeth as an answer, as she wasn't a thing until sister location. So who does it belong to? Before I go any further, I want to first direct everyone to T-Drez and the Unwithered Truth, as much of what I will talk about was discovered by Unwithered on T-Drez Overanalyzing FNaF for a livestream, which is peak by the way, make sure to check them out in the description. I also even cameoed in Unlimited Troops' April Fool's video. It was really fun. Great, really funny too, actually. But regardless, massive credit to them for pointing out a lot of stuff I will bring up. So, getting into it, who could the sister be? Some do believe it was the pigtail girl, which does make sense given the very similar color schemes, but her dialogue about "see you at the party" does throw it off, as she would have seen him at home and not the party. It's just very weird. Then there's the toy girl, who also does make some sense, given how there's a manga toy in the room and she has toys outside completing the collection. But not much beyond that is really evidence for this character. So what's the true answer? Well, firstly, we have to consider a foundation. Scott made the sister's room intentionally empty. He wanted to be a mystery. It would be a mystery because it would matter to the story of the game. So if that's the case, why would it be a random kid outside who doesn't have much relevance besides potentially being a future DCI victim? So with that thought in mind, it does make it more unlikely that any of those outside kids are the sister, given how irrelevant they are to FNAF 4 as a whole, besides some potential theories on past connections. So where should we start though to start solving who the sister was meant to be? Well, obviously, let's start in the sister's room by first taking a look at the mangled toy, as she's a broken mango toy lying on the floor. This wouldn't seem to matter all that much, but let's go back to FNAF 2. How did Phone Guy describe Mangle in the game?
The staff literally had to put Foxy back together at the end of every shift. So eventually they just stopped trying and left him in some kind of take apart, put back together attraction.
Ralph calls Mangle a take apart and put back together attraction. Put back together. Doesn't that sound familiar? You can probably see where I'm going at this, but stick with me. Look at the flower sprite on the wall of the room, the one with the pink petals. It may remind you of the flowers outside really find Plush Bear weirdly in, but this one is noticeably different. And I don't just mean the colors, it's missing its sixth petal, and that's a pretty intentional detail, as it does indicate a willing flower, or in other words, a dying flower, as if it's implying the sister is dead. Even the center of the flower is golden like the Plush Bear, and if that's not enough, Plush Bear outside covers up the sixth petal on the flower. This aligns perfectly if the Plush Bear is the puppet, as the puppet is typically depicted as the sixth among the main five, like in Happy Stay in FNAF 3, or Gives Life in FNAF 2, or FNAF 6 with the Gravestone ending, or even the new games with the Fast Force and the Memory plushie. And if the sister and Plush Bear is Charlie, the toy connection makes even more sense too, since Henry, according to the SOLVES, which by the way was made the same year as FNAF 4, makes toys for his kids. The book goes out of its way to point that out. But there's also another thing in the books that we can use to piece this together. In the SOLVES, it states that Charlie, which at the time we thought was Sammy, was taken on Halloween of 1982, a whole year before the events of FNAF 4, and consider that FNAF 4's own marketing referenced 1982 in the property of Freddy's Diner's teaser, the location Charlie was taken in the SOLVES. So it would be very strange for Scott to use these overlapping dates and characters if they had no relevance. And remember again, Scott was making the SOLVES the same time as FNAF 4. So why else would 1982 be relevant to FNAF 4 if the only significant event that occurs in 1982 was the murder of Charlie, leaving a dead sister by 1983 when the bite happens? And that's not the last of the evidence as well. For example, the crying child directly parallels the puppet's black and white Shrek design with tear tracks. And in the Night 6 minigame, he replicates the exact same pose the puppet does in FNAF 3's Mangle's Quest minigame, as if they're the same, but not. In fact, if Mangle's Quest ties to the memory of the sister's room due to the Mangle toy and this being the crying child's memories given, ShatterVictim, then why wouldn't the big secret of Mangle's Quest, the massive crying puppet, not imply the puppet was the sister? Because remember, if these are the crying child's memories, then why else would the puppet be in the memory of the sister's room or the Mangle toy, unless, well, the puppet is related to the room and the toy? And to finally seal the deal, look again at the Night 6 minigame. Notice how it's a black void with a spotlight over two things, the bite victim and Plush Bear, the former becoming Fredbear, and the latter being a spirit possessing his Fredbear plush. Now, what's the very next thing we see when we beat the next night? Yup, the box. The box in a black void with a spotlight on it. And what's on the box? 2 golden locks for 2 golden keys, or maybe 2 golden siblings. The bite victim and plush bear are the golden keys to the box. Once again, make sure to check out the overanalyzing live streams by T-Dread. He's making a really cool video on this, so make sure to check him out if you somehow haven't heard of him already. So my overall conclusion here is that the sister in FNAF 4 is none other than Charlie. Now how that works in the modern lore is up for speculation and theorizing, but if we operate off that still being the case now as it was back then, how does that affect ShatterVictim and how does it really change things? Well, I believe it's because we can take ShatterVictim and turn it into Shatter siblings. Not only is the bite victim shattered, but his sister is as well. So yeah, Shatter Charlie. But why? Well, firstly, Charlie is attached to the bite victim in some way, being able to telepathically communicate to him and only being visible to him alone. So that alone does imply she is somewhat shattered, as her soul is well a part of him. But it is also supported by some minigames. In Give Gifts Give Life, she is given the gift of life to the MCI kids as the animatronics. But what exactly is she doing? Well, it is a popular idea and theory that the puppet was giving a bit of a remnant to each of the kids to help them possess the animatronics, as it may be even implied in one of the Candy Cadet stories. I do believe this is very plausible, if not very likely, and if so, it would make her connected to the others in a very similar way the bite victim would be, as remnant is basically your soul energy. If your remnant is a part of something else, your soul is effectively split apart. Likewise though, it just, well, makes sense. She's involved throughout the entire process of Happiest Day, helping the crying child with his memories and freeing the other children. Even if the puppet does have more agency than the others, it's very clear she is uniquely connected to them. We also see that, similar to Golden Freddy, she has influence over the kids, like when she awakens Freddy and saves them and orders him to save the children. The puppet in general acts like a leader and shepherd for the children, which makes sense if she has direct influence over them. After all, they are directly under her protection. What this kind of creates is a Shatter siblings concept, where both the souls of Golden Freddy as the bite victim and the puppet as Charlie are connected to the other animatronics. This explains why they both have some level of influence and control over them, and why Golden Freddy and the puppet are depicted as unique leaders or shepherds for the others, like the puppet in Save Them in Happiest Day, or Golden Freddy in Follow Me, and even the movie. In a more simplified way, the bite victim and Charlie's soul is shattered to the other animatronics, and that's why they both have some level of influence and control over them. They both are connected to them in a very unique way. Now, overall, I think this expands ShatterVictim pretty nicely, and fills in some of the problems I have with it for a good while now, allowing why Golden Freddy and the puppet both have a unique influence and control over the others, and why the bite victim and Charlie are so interlinked, while also solving the sisters room in FNAF 4. Now though, I do understand if the modern context with Elizabeth and the act and storyline may put a big issue if it's still being the case now, but I do have ideas how it could still work even today, but it felt out of scope to cover in this video, as I just want to well present the theory, then we'll have a 1-hour documentary on why it still works. But maybe I'll do it in the future, we'll see then. Until that time comes though, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and make sure to like and subscribe if you did, and make sure to comment down below with your thoughts, as it really does support the channel and the video. I also want to give a massive special thanks again to my friend Captus for being the voice of Charlie. She did fantastic as usual. Additionally, massive thanks to Freddy for doing the renders for the intro of the video, and the flip side for doing the edits on ShatterVictim. Make sure to check out all their channels down below in the description. Show some support, they are really good friends and they make good content. With all that said, see ya.